So if you use FreeCAD, then you've come across this problem, wire not closed. In this video, we're going to understand what a wire is, how to understand whether it's closed or open, and go through the common scenarios of when we get this and how to fix it. So I hope you enjoy these videos, and let's have a look at this problem in FreeCAD. If you like what you see and you want to donate to the channel, then you can do so via Ko-Fi or Coffee at ko-fi.com/MANG0 or via PayPal at paypal.com/paypalme/DarrenBEstone. I also run a Patreon where you can get early access and additional content, and that's at patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Links can be found in the channel header, on the About page, or in the descriptions of these videos. So first of all, we're going to understand what a wire is. I'm in the Sketcher workbench, and create a new sketch which can go along the XY plane. Now a wire can be anything such as a piece of geometry, such as this line here. I can see that it's a wire if I close and come over to the part workbench, click on the sketch, go to part and check geometry. What we'll do is just run the tests, and what we're interested in is this shape content down here. If I click on that, you can see that the checked object was a sketch and the shape type is a wire. If I look down, we can see that the is closed is false. So before we extrude this into a face, a shell, etc., this single piece of geometry in this sketch, it's an open wire. Let's close that and double click the sketch. So this also is a wire. Close that and come up to part, check geometry, run the test, go into the shape content, and you can see sketch type is wire and it's got two edges, but it's still a single wire. And also it's still open. So there's no continuity between these. They do not connect together. Let's close that. Come over to the sketch, and let's create a closed piece of geometry. So I'm going to use the polyline, this one here, and go coincident to this one here and to here. So we've basically got this shape. If I hit close, we click on the sketch, part, so in the part workbench, part, and check geometry, and run the checks. This will still be a wire. So you can see shape type is wire because we've got no faces on there. Y is 1, edge is 4, but now it is closed. So you can see this closed is true. And that's because that we have these points all connected up. So I can take that sketch and extrude it. So let's close this. Take the sketch and extrude it in the part workbench. Yeah, okay. And we create this extrude successfully. So this extrude now is a solid. So if I come up to part, check geometry, run check, we can see the shape content now is solid. If this geometry was broken, let's close that and come into the sketch. So let's break this geometry by deleting one of these coincident constraints. I clicked on it, hit delete. So now what we've got is a piece of open geometry, so you can see that. But just hit Control Z there. And if I zoom right in, we can see we're still coincident to that point. Though we haven't got constraint, that point is still on top of this point here. So if I close this, our extrude is still valid. And our sketch, check geometry, and run the check. Go to shape content. You can see we've got shape type of wire. The checked object was that sketch, not this extrude. And the is closed is still true. And this is where the errors come into play. So if I looked at that sketch, it's a valid sketch, it's closed geometry. But you notice that this line I've got in here isn't quite vertical. So let's say I wanted to make this vertical. So I'm going to bring this in here. So you can see that's almost vertical. So I'm going to click on it and use the vertical constraint. And if we look, we're still okay. This is still coincident, but if, for instance, let's put a length in here, let's okay that, and create this as a vertical constraint, you notice how that's moved away from this point. Now this is going to fail. If I hit close, we can see got exclamation mark and wire is not closed. So we're getting a problem in the tree view. So the wire is not closed, and that's because we're trying to make a solid out of an open piece of geometry. And this is where the problems can occur, because we can have a point that looks coincident, but when we add a constraint, that's just Control Z that. But when we add a constraint, let's say that this was just out. So we had something like this, and this was just out. So you can see that I've zoomed right in, but I've left some space in here. When I zoom out, it looks like these 2 points are coincident, and we add the constraint. And you can see that, well, they have moved apart, but that is really easy to miss. If we zoom out, you can see, well, it looks coincident, we look okay. Hit close, we get this exclamation mark. Why is not closed? The extrude, if we come down and set the solid to false, then that solves the error because we've got a shell now. We can make a shell with open wires. Go out to part, check geometry, run check. We see that the shape content of that extrude now is a shell. And that's because the geometry is not closed. So how do we solve this? How do we check for those in an easy manner? Well, FreeCAD does have a way to detect open geometry or problematic coincident constraints or vertices. I'm going to delete the extrude and come into the sketch, press the spacebar, so I got this here. So you can see that there, and it's not obvious where the problem is. Let's click on that sketch and just bring up the view. I'm just going to bring up the line width to make it a bit more easier to see. There we go, 4. If I come over to the sketcher, click on the sketch, come up to the sketch, and come down to the validate sketch, click on that, we have a number of tools in here. So we've got the missing coincidence, which allows us to find that missing constraint with some tolerance. So if I hit find, then we may be able to find it. Often this doesn't work because these points are too close together. So this is not going to work. The one that we need to rely on is this one, open and non-manifold vertices. And hit highlight troublesome vertices. You see that we've got this yellow crosshairs that's appeared here. As I zoom in, you can see what the problem is. So now we know we've pinpointed the problem, and we can go back into our sketch and fix that. So I can highlight those and use the coincident constraint against there, close that, and that sketch, go up to the part and extrude that. Yeah, okay, you can see that extrude's fine. This is the same in the part design as well, so I'm going to use the same sketch over in the part design. And what we'll do, click on the sketch, place it inside a body on the XY plane. That'll be placed inside there. And at the moment we can pad this. Because this is closed, let's cancel that. But if we come into the sketch and delete this coincident constraint and bring this out a bit, like so, hit close, then this is where we get the error with the wire not closed. Let's hit OK, and Y is not closed. And the good thing about part design is that we've got the sketch menu in here, so I can click on the sketch, come up to sketch, and validate. Highlight troublesome vertices, or if we've got the missing coincidence, let's see if we can find that. Let's drop these down. So we can see we've still got problems with this working, but our highlight troubles and vertices allows us to find that anyway. And we just go in and fix that. As said, the way this is caused is if we have these lines close to each other, like so, and we add, say we was editing this, see this line here, and we add a vertical constraint, and because these two aren't coincident, then we end up moving those away. That's one way. Another way is with mirroring. So if I take all of this and delete it, if we have, say, center point and end point arc, and we'll place the arc in here, and we'll use mirroring with this. So I've got this arc here, hit escape to get the mouse pointer back, take the arc, and the last thing we selected is this line here, and I'm going to use a symmetry to bring this over to this side to create the full circle. We'll just sketch a circle anyway. This is just for demonstration. So I'm going to use the symmetry tool there, and it all looks fine. And if we hit close, we can see that sketch is in there, and we pad it, and it pads fine. Yeah, okay. But again, if I take that sketch and set some radius, so you can see as I pull this out, this pulls out, Control Z, and I set the radius to this one, 45, and let's reduce that down to say 44. Then this moves away from this constraint. Control Z that. So if I came in here and reduce this down and say, oh, I've got 45 here, 45.80, I'm just going to take the 80 off and hit enter, hit close, and then straight away we got a problem. Why not closed? Because we just rounded that down, but as you can see, this has moved away from this point here. And all we need to do is take these 2 points, make them coincident, and the same with these two. Highlight them, drag highlight, and coincident constraint in there, and close. And we've fixed that problem. So another way this will happen is if we got like a 2D object that we've imported in via an SVG. So if I look at the bottom of this, you notice something. So this is the face, but if we look, zoom in, we've got this here. So this is actually the face along the edge. The reason why I've got this is that I've altered this slightly. So this pad, I'll double click that, I've added a taper angle on here, so we've actually taper in it. And we can do that with -1 as well to make it go the other way. So we can see that from the top. So I click on the top, you can see we've got a taper. So we can see the top and the bottom. If I projected this into a 2D view, if I come over to the draft workbench, click on the pad, and we've got the top selected there, modifications and shape 2D view, then let's hide the body. This looks like it's got a single edge, especially if we zoomed out. This kind of thing we may see in like an SVG or some kind of plan we imported in from a 2D source. I've just created this 2D view to show you how this can be done. But when we look at this and say come over to the part and try to extrude this, so that's the same as extruding some SVG geometry, and hit OK, then you can see the extrude has extruded that fine, but when we look down, the solid is false. I set that to true, and what I'm expecting, if I was looking at this, I expect this face to be filled. And click off. We get this exclamation mark and why not closed. When we zoom in and right in, we can see the problem here. What should have happened is that, well, it looks like we've got a walled object. So if we look at this and we think to ourselves, well, this should extrude it as basically a ring, so a void inside, but still solid, but with this thickness here. If we look along the geometry, you can see that we have this line that's causing the issue. So if I delete the extrude, bring out the shape 2D view, And what we should have in here is this as a wire. Let's come over to part and check geometry, run check. And we can see we've got a self-intersection found. So we've got a problem with this geometry. If I look at the shape content, we can see that the shape is in fact a compound. So it's got multiple items within here. To fix this shape or this piece of SVG geometry that we've imported in, let's come over to the draft workbench and use the downgrade tools. So what the downgrade tools allows me to do is take this and downgrade it into a simpler part. Modifications, downgrade. It has now downgraded, but it hasn't split. So let's come up to modifications and downgrade once again. And now we get all of the edges. So we've got edges now. If I click, I can see this edge, the inner, and then the outer bottom and the inner bottom. I have 2 additional edges in here, and you can see what's happening. They're highlighting in these places. So I can take these 2 and hit delete on the keyboard. I've shift selected those and hit delete. Now I don't have them. I can then take all of these, select them all, and upgrade them. Modifications, upgrade. We get 2 wires. So create 2 wires, and because that bridge isn't in there, it's made no connection between these 2 wires. So we get an outer circle and an inner circle with no connection. So they have to be shown as 2 wires in there. Remember, we're dealing with a downgraded object and not a sketch. These 2, if I select both of those, they can be converted to a sketch. So draft to sketch, modifications, draft to sketch. And we get that single sketch in there, and we can hide these wires by clicking on and pressing the spacebar. Let's come over to the part workbench, click on the sketch, and extrude that now, and hit OK. So this is extruded fine. You can see it's a solid, but we have this void in here, and that's because we've extruded, and you can see we've got this in here. Let's click on that extrude and make that cleaner. View 0.05 on deviation. There we go. So you can see that basically we've got a ring in here, a solid ring. If, let's hide that extrude, I took one of the wires and extruded that and hit OK, you can see we've got that solid in there. But because we got these 2 wires inside a sketch, in this one, let's double click it and hide the pad so we can see what we're doing. It's actually the extrude. Let's click on the extrude and hide that. You can see that a conversion to a sketch has created this geometry in there. And we can alter this if we want. You can see that we've actually got an outer and inner skin between those. Hit close. And we'll see that extrusion there. Another way that we get this error message, let's go back to the pad and click on the body, press the space bar, delete the wire and click on the pad, press the space bar to show it, is that if we had overlapping geometry. So for instance, if I double click that sketch, and let's for instance say that we had, delete that, this box, which is closed geometry, no problems. But let's say we've been editing this and we started off with lines first and then join them up together. We may have another line in here. So I've got 2 lines in here now. If I hit close, you can see we've got wire not closed again. That's because I've added an additional line, but as I've been sketching, we can't actually see that additional line in there. The only way we can see it is by going through all of these and trying to find it that way. So is there a way to detect that we've got that additional line in there? Let's hit close. Click the sketch. Let's come over to the sketcher. Sketch is selected. Sketch. Validate sketch. Highlight troubles and vertices. And you can see we've got some vertices highlighted in there. Click on model. Click on the pad and press the space bar so we can see that in there. And I show the sketch. So you can see that's been highlighted in there. So I hope that's given you an insight into the reasons why we get this wire not closed error message coming up, how to detect it, and how to solve it. And I look forward to seeing you in the new video. If you like what you see and you want to donate to the channel, then you can do so via Ko-Fi or Coffee at ko-fi.com/MANG0 or via PayPal at paypal.com/PayPalMe/Darren B.E. Stone. I also run a Patreon where you can get early access and additional content, and that's at patreon.com/Mango Jelly Solutions. Links can be found in the channel header, on the About page, or in the descriptions of these videos. I thank everybody that's donated so far. It really helps to keep the lights on so I can produce more content and also expand the channel. Thank you for liking, commenting and subscribing to these videos, and I hope to see you again in the next one.